Imagine feeling unnoticed, alienated, and misinterpreted by others around you as the day comes to a close. Silently hurting, that persistent feeling of not fitting in or being accepted pushes you to engage in actions that only temporarily satisfy your needs without ever really curing the wound. We're going to confront those emotions today, uncover their causes, and find a real solution to break this pattern, so you can at last create real connections and achieve the equilibrium you've been seeking. I've noticed that when a man finds it difficult to make friends, connect with people, or feel acknowledged or approved in his everyday interactions, it can gradually push him into a state of subtle frustration and disconnection. This inner loneliness frequently leads him to turn to habits like masturbation, which many may initially view as unimportant, but which over time can become a reliable crutch that keeps him trapped in a cycle of instantaneous but meaningless gratification. Our emotional and spiritual balance and the quality of our social connections are closely related. This relationship may not be immediately obvious, but it becomes clear when we examine how our moods change based on whether we feel valued, understood, and accepted, or conversely, judged, ignored, or even subtly rejected. A man's internal feelings are directly influenced by his perception of his place in society. When he is socially successful, feeling appreciated, recognized, and a part of a group, his chest feels lighter, his thoughts become more positive, and the desire to use self-destructive behaviors to make up for negative emotions is greatly reduced. However, it is not surprising that he may revert to his old habit of solitary pleasure and the fleeting dopamine rush that may feel temporarily comforting, but ultimately makes him feel even more alone when these relationships fail, and he looks around and sees a desolate landscape of missed connections or failed attempts to form bonds. Since I have experienced these emotions myself and have seen innumerable other men struggle with them as well, frequently without even recognizing what is causing their mental anguish, I, Laert, here at Gods of Semen, am able to comprehend the intricacy of these sensations. Sometimes it's not a dramatic situation of overt bullying or overt hostility. It can be something as subtle as feeling like you're never heard completely, that you're always the outsider in a group, that you get lukewarm reactions when you try to open up, or that you're not seen for who you truly are. A guy may eventually begin to doubt his value, his attractiveness, and his inherent worth as a human being as a result of the accumulation of minor slights and silent rejections. The mechanics of masturbation are frequently oversimplified by society as a simple bodily want, a biological urge that must be satisfied. Yet this is a shallow interpretation that ignores the underlying spiritual and emotional currents. It is true that emotional dissatisfaction and psychological imbalance can give rise to masturbation as a coping technique. It is a maladaptive reaction to a complicated emotional wound that has not yet found a healthy outlet for expression and recovery. It might turn into an unsuccessful attempt to bridge an ethereal gap, a gloom influenced by loneliness, as well as the feeling that one does not belong, that something is lacking from the fabric of interpersonal relationships. The recurrence of this pattern over time may intensify the feeling of estrangement. The man starts to believe that he is unable to overcome the imperceptible barriers that stand between him and a more satisfying social life. He may begin to feel that deep connections are only for other people, that he is essentially ugly or imperfect, and that no matter what he does, no one would genuinely accept him. His sense of helplessness and inability to change how other people see him frequently leads to a silent sadness that makes him turn to his own body, the one readily available source of pleasure he can rely on for comfort. However, as men pursuing spiritual and personal development, particularly those of us investigating the concepts of semen retention, we need to dig further. We have to question ourselves what this cycle's true nature is. Is our lack of confidence a result of our repeated societal failures? Are we looking for a short-lived high that leaves us feeling exhausted and let down as a way to make up for a lack of genuine connection? Are we holding on to a system that lets us avoid the awkwardness of being honest with ourselves? Real progress necessitates having the guts to face these issues head-on, to dissect our actions, and to realize that, in this situation, masturbation is about more than just physical gratification. It's about the unfulfilled need for social peace, approval, and acknowledgement. Potential changes become possible when we acknowledge this underlying cause. We can put effort into developing our communication skills, learning to interpret social signs more effectively, posture, grooming, health, and emotional intelligence rather than numbing ourselves with lonely routines. The goal of this self-improvement is to enable us show the world who we are from a place of self-respect and authenticity, not to turn us into people pleasers who are frantically seeking acceptance. It is simpler to draw in the relationships we truly want when we project a calm confidence, develop inner strength, and balance our body, mind, and soul. Nevertheless, it is important to realize that not all social problems are caused by our own failings. People's responses to us can occasionally be more influenced by their own biases, fears, or limits. Not everyone will connect with the essence of humans, since we are complicated creatures impacted by a wide range of circumstances, including cultural conditioning and genetic predispositions. This is not a failing of mine. It is just a fact of life that some people will not perceive or value us for who we are, regardless of how mature we grow or how well we present ourselves. A feeling of release may result from realizing this fact. You may not be essentially defective if you are not accepted by a certain social group or setting. Rather, it may be that those individuals are not on the same frequency as you. The pain of rejection can be lessened by accepting this. You have the option to look for new groups, new people, and new places where your energy is genuinely appreciated rather than withdrawing into the comfort zone of lonely pleasure. I am aware that this is easier said than done, but as a man who is actively engaged in the process of spiritual and personal growth and who values the preservation of vital energy through semen retention, it is evident that our life force is valuable and ought to be focused on pursuits and routines that support our long-term development rather than our whims. Masturbation is more than just letting out sexual stress when it occurs in the midst of social displeasure. It is a symbolic retreat, a rejection of the difficulties of connection, and a submission to the notion that we are unable to rise above our societal constraints. However, we are able to go beyond them by practicing being more present and attentive when we interact with others, listening to them more intently, demonstrating genuine interest in their lives, and gradually discovering that our enhanced presence elicits more warmth and engagement from those we meet. We can channel that same powerful energy into developing social courage. A subtle change takes place over time as we keep improving ourselves, honing our spiritual practice, improving our posture, taking care of our health, honing our style, and cultivating a rich inner life. We discover that we are spending more time working on projects that are important to us, developing skills that increase our sense of self-worth, and looking for relationships with people who share our interests, rather than feeling driven to reach for the transient pleasure of masturbation to relieve our loneliness. The shallow fast fix of solo fulfillment loses appeal when we invest more in these positive avenues. The deeper fulfillment that comes from genuine connections, motivational talks, shared laughter, and the delight of being genuinely seen and valued by people who share our nature starts to seem like a poor alternative for it. Naturally, this path will not be without its challenges. There may still be days when we feel ignored or misunderstood, or when social contacts go badly, and on these days the old habit may entice us once more. But we can stop and think if we have a better grasp of what motivates that urge. A brief period of physical release can serve as a reminder that the sense of loneliness is fleeting and cannot be fully overcome. Alternatively, we might use that restless energy to do something positive, like writing in a journal, running, meditating, or honing a skill we've been trying to learn. These different reactions eventually produce new brain pathways and emotional patterns. They demonstrate that unpleasant emotions about ourselves or how society views us may be recognized, processed, and progressively changed. They also show us that suffering need not be avoided by seeking immediate enjoyment. It's not about blaming ourselves for the conduct when we acknowledge that masturbation may be a sign of more serious social issues. The goal is to comprehend it in a broader context and use that comprehension as a springboard for personal development. As men committed to spiritual development and semen retention, we value the notion that our sexual energy is more than just physical. Along with being psychological and spiritual, it is entwined with our creativity, feeling of purpose, and ability to engage with the world in a meaningful way. We find that this energy can support our goals if we learn to protect it and avoid wasting it on transient pleasures. It can enable us the bravery to bravely enter unfamiliar social situations, to open up to others despite the possibility of rejection, and to overcome the discomfort of awkward small chat. we cease to perceive ourselves as victims of circumstance and begin to see ourselves as active players in a vast tapestry of human connection when we are able to apply this insight to our everyday lives. We understand that we can improve our own presence, even though we have no influence over how other people respond to us. We may match our energy, words, and body language to our core beliefs. Instead of projecting neediness or anxiety, we can endeavor to exude genuineness and kindness. Even though not everyone may react favorably, the relationships that do develop are frequently of a higher caliber, more solid, and more satisfying than any transient high we might get from satisfying our desires in private. This change in viewpoint takes time to manifest. It is a slow process that calls for perseverance, patience, and the capacity to face discomfort head-on rather than avoid it. However, as we proceed along this path, we come to understand that it was more than just sexual desire that first drove us to engage in excessive masturbation. It was a desperate emotional need for attention, a yearning for the elusive human approval and warmth. By adopting this perspective, we may confront the behavior with empathy instead of shame or guilt. We can tell ourselves, "I have experienced agony, loneliness, and exclusion, and I have looked for solace in the only manner I know how. However, I now know more. I am confident in my ability to build meaningful relationships. I may grow as a person to increase my chances of meeting kind-hearted others. I can make an investment in my well-being, energy, and self-assurance. I am able to show the world a more genuine side of me. As I discover my tribe and get familiar with the nuances of human interactions, I can be patient. And I have faith that as I keep going, the recurrence of those old cravings will lessen and be replaced by the constant fulfillment that comes from knowing that I am growing into a more whole and integrated man." As someone who has been on this journey, I speak with empathy and sympathy rather than condemnation. I understand what it's like to feel invisible, ignored, and cut off. However, I am also aware of the power of intentionally focusing energy. As men who engage in semen retention, we recognize that we possess a powerful life force that can be used to improve our listening skills, compassion as friends, motivation as speakers, and self-assurance when engaging in the dance of human interaction. Or it can be directed toward wasting it on fleeting pleasure. The idea of isolating oneself in order to find pleasure gradually loses its appeal. We learn that although human connections are inevitably unpredictable and can often result in hurt or disappointment, they also provide deep benefits that no one action can match. We are nourished in ways that masturbation cannot. The peaceful sense of trust that arises when someone chooses to confide in you, the laughing over a joke that only your circle of friends find funny, the spark of understanding in someone's eyes. We begin to realize that, despite the fact that it might be frightening, the vulnerability needed to build deep connections is precisely what makes them so potent and satisfying. We acknowledge that not everyone will be drawn to our vibe and that we might not always blend in perfectly with every setting. However, we discover how to look for the people and places that we do connect with. As we improve our ability to express who we are, we develop patience. Instead of worrying about whether we are receiving the approval we so desperately seek, we learn to give as much as we would like to receive, giving our time, compassion, and understanding. By doing this, we connect with a broader and more giving version of male energy that sees social encounters as chances for growth rather than as transactions. The concept of going back to the cycle of masturbation for consolation becomes less and less enticing as we develop our feeling of self-worth and spiritual grounding over the course of months and years. The ability to approach the world with an open heart and eyes, even when it does not always embrace us, is something we have discovered that is richer, more sustaining, and ultimately more in line with our greatest desires. By doing this, we progressively develop the resilience necessary to endure the unavoidable setbacks of social life. We discover that if we continue to believe in ourselves and the ability of people to connect meaningfully, there are innumerable interactions waiting for us, even if one particular encounter leaves us feeling empty. As a result, the energy that was previously expended on patterns of fleeting satisfaction is recovered. It is put back into our purpose, our interests, our well-being, our friendships, our communities, and our spiritual growth. When men choose to face their emotional challenges head-on, learn from them, and use the drive that once drove compulsive habits to become more integrated, self-aware, and spiritually aligned beings, we become living examples of what is possible. The recollection of using masturbation as a coping strategy would eventually fade, replaced by the understanding that every interpersonal interaction difficulty, every instance of feeling ignored, and every subliminal rejection was, in fact, an opportunity to develop. That invitation was taken seriously by us. We turned compulsion into creation, loneliness into inspiration, and irritation into gasoline. We discovered how to truly accept ourselves, love our flaws, face the mirror without embarrassment, and show the world who we really are. By doing this, we respect the dedication to semen retention as a holistic way of living, one that recognizes the interdependence of our physical, emotional, and spiritual selves and works to balance them, rather than just as a physical discipline. Because we realize that masculinity is not determined by the number of victories we win or the number of individuals who affirm us, we carry ourselves differently. It is determined by our honesty, the sincerity of our attempts to establish a connection, and the caliber of the presence we offer to each interaction. We have more time, energy, and emotional stability to devote to our objectives now that we are out of the old cycle. We may choose to become more physically active, pick up new skills, visit locations where we can interact with people from various cultures, or partake in spiritual activities that help us feel more purposeful. The memories of using masturbation as a form of comfort starts to seem like an antiquated solution to a problem we have learned to address at its core, as these positive pursuits occupy our days and enhance our lives. We continue to change because we know that life is a never-ending journey with new obstacles at every turn. However, we now have methods, perspectives, and resources that enable us to function in social situations without losing who we are. Knowing that if we approach people with genuineness, goodwill, and a steady internal sense of worth, we raise the possibility that they would react favorably. We have faith in the power of our desire. Even if they don't, we know how to handle the disappointment without making ourselves doubt ourselves or neglect ourselves. We have constructed an internal structure that can resist the erratic winds of social contact. We are no longer subject to the same cycle of loneliness and quick gratification. We have found a more satisfying way of living, one that values the complexity of human nature and recognizes that societal harmony is something we co-create by bravery, empathy, and patience rather than something that just happens. Above all, we have discovered that our ability to live fully and authentically is closely linked to our sexual energy, which is far from being merely a carnal power. We now realize that by protecting and guiding this energy, we improve our general well-being and make it simpler to locate and cultivate the interpersonal relationships that feed our souls. The battle has given us purpose, and we have shown ourselves that we are capable of overcoming our urges and paving the way to our greatest potential. This insight serves as evidence of the strength of free will and the tenacity of the human spirit. We have shown that growth is possible, change is achievable, and the pain of separation can be transformed into a greater awareness of ourselves and others, regardless of where we began, how deep the habit ran, or how alone we once felt. By doing this, we declare that our path, no matter how difficult, is ultimately valuable and leads us to a life characterized by the depth of genuine connection and meaningful self-expression rather than the emptiness of transient pleasure. Imagine coming to the end of the day with the sense that you have more within of you, a hidden force that is aching to be roused, a genuine potential that is just waiting to be discovered. You feel restless and yearn to connect with more people. Let go of your vital energy and find a greater meaning in life. I wrote my new book, Alchemy of the Gods, specifically to satisfy this desire for evolution. In it, you will learn about Kundalini, crystalline oil, and spiritual liberation, 3 key concepts for altering your state of consciousness and reaching an unparalleled degree of inner equilibrium. Do you want to nurture your soul, feel your essence resonate at a higher level, and have a profound growth experience? You can access the wisdom of Alchemy of the Gods from anywhere at any time thanks to its availability in print, digital, and audiobook versions. Both the description and the comments have the link pinned. Don't pass up this opportunity to go beyond the boundaries of your present state. But first, I have some unexpected news for you. Now, I, Laert, am offering you something that will further advance your transformational journey. The Semen Retention Success Path is the ultimate manual you've been looking for if you're prepared to change your life and increase your energy to unseen levels. I've compiled the 6 most important semen retention themes into an audiobook that contains more than 2 hours of insightful material for your growth. Prepare yourself for an unconventional voyage of self-discovery and personal development. Imagine regaining your vigor, discovering a vast amount of vital energy, and experiencing significant and long-lasting growth. This audiobook is more than just knowledge. It's the secret to reaching new heights of success and accomplishment. There's more. You'll get a 30% discount on my unique ebook, The Art of Semen Retention for Men, which features more than 20 pages of impactful content when you buy the audiobook. Advanced methods for spiritual development, emotional equilibrium, increased self-awareness, personal development, a stronger spiritual bond, and a purposeful life will become available to you. I'm here to provide you with high-quality content that breaks down obstacles and elevates your state of being so you can realize your full potential. Additionally, I'm launching my new channel members page for people who wish to further support my effort and receive exclusive advantages. You will receive exclusive YouTube rights, first dibs on new videos, additional resources, exclusive live sessions, and much more if you become a supportive member. Your encouragement not only inspires me to create even more fresh content, but it also fortifies a group of individuals dedicated to their personal development, thereby strengthening our common goal of progress. Don't pass up this chance. The change you're looking for is right here. Check out the pinned link in the description and comments. Learn about Alchemy of the Gods. Get the Semen Retention Success Path. Get a deal on The Art of Semen Retention for Men, and sign up as a channel member. Your path to a genuine, vibrant, and purposeful existence starts right now. I can attest to this truth since I have seen directly how innumerable minute details that are out of my conscious control affect how someone views me from the moment we first meet. It can be unnerving to know that regardless of the words I use, my facial structure, jawline angles, skin texture, voice, and even shoulder posture all contribute to an impression that is created long before I'm able to express my reality. As Laert, here at Gods of Semen, I know how frustrating this can be, especially for men who work hard to better themselves both physically and spiritually, who understand their emotional landscape, who develop healthy habits, and who work on personal development, but who are conscious that a lot of how other people perceive them depends on factors that were established before they were even born. Nevertheless, I've realized that comprehending these unconscious filters is essential to learning how to navigate the social world with more awareness and inner calm, rather than to sink into hopelessness. Here, we are not totally helpless. While it is true that some physical characteristics are determined by our genetic makeup, and that people react to them in ways that are not directly under our control, it is important to understand that this does not mean that we have failed as individuals. Our ancestors were able to swiftly determine who might be a friend or adversary, who might contain advantageous genetic material, or who would pose a threat because the human body is programmed to make instantaneous decisions as part of an ancient survival mechanism. The fact that our world has become more sophisticated and socially intricate does not mean that these impulses have disappeared. They continue to be firmly embedded beneath societal conventions, cultural layers, and logical thinking. Unfortunately, we frequently internalize negative reactions, taking a lack of warmth or attention as proof that we are naturally flawed. I'm aware of how simple it is to become self-conscious when you feel that, despite your lack of rudeness or hostility, individuals occasionally keep their distance, exhibit less zeal, or avoid interaction. It may cause you to doubt your value. However, by removing the veil and recognizing that these instincts function with or without intellectual support, we start to understand that it is not about being a less valuable person. Rather, it is about not fitting the stereotype that causes a favorable instinctive reaction in a specific person or group. This realization is oddly freeing. You can see these social judgments as a part of a huge network of unconscious assessments rather than carrying the burden of them around, believing they represent who you are, or you may have been born with some traits that are not universally attractive, traits that were passed down from a distant ancestor who flourished in a different era and location, and now you must navigate contemporary streets while dealing with subtly negative assessments that you never requested. You may let go of the notion that you must be flawed once you realize this. Despite the complexity of human civilizations, We have to admit that these unconscious filters are here to stay. Despite our confidence in our logic, humans are nonetheless influenced by a variety of archaic behavioral patterns. It would be like attempting to change human nature overnight to try to make other people disregard these inclinations. While acknowledging this reality can be discouraging at first, it can also motivate us to focus our efforts in areas where we have greater control, such as enhancing our posture, emotional intelligence, communication abilities, health, and personal hygiene. Even while we cannot change the genetic lottery that determined our appearance, we can change some perceptions to our advantage by doing this. Our physical presence can be subtly but significantly enhanced by adopting healthier habits, enhancing our diet, getting adequate sleep, exercising frequently, and practicing semen retention. We tend to stand taller, our skin often looks better, our eyes become more alive, and we carry ourselves with a calm confidence that may not make everyone adore us, but can soften some of those instinctive judgments. These are all signs that we are physically strong, well-rested, and vibrating with a kind of inner vitality that comes from balanced hormones and careful energy management. This does not imply that we should become fixated on pleasing everyone, or that we should solely base our sense of self-worth on what other people think of us. Instead, it entails admitting that some gains in vitality and health can somewhat tip these unconscious balances in our favor, making it less likely that at least some of those preliminary evaluations will end up being neutral or negative. Even so, it's critical to acknowledge that certain people will never find our presence desirable, regardless of what we do. They may be programmed to react favorably to face features that we lack, or to a speech tone that we do not have. This is not a weakness or a personal failure. It simply implies that we don't arouse their sense of familiarity or affinity on an instinctual level. The secret is to stop taking these criticisms personally, even though there may not be a single solution to make ourselves palatable to everyone. We can view them as inevitable results of innumerable random elements at work, rather than as proof of our shortcomings. Understanding how layers of cultural indoctrination, personal biases, mood swings, and ancestral wiring affect people's reactions releases us from the need to mend something that never broke. These emotions of bewilderment and inadequacy are frequently the origins of the appeal of masturbation. We may turn to the one consistent source of pleasure we have when we feel that no matter what we say or do, people do not react favorably. The cycle is simple to comprehend. Emotional misery stems from feeling misinterpreted or underappreciated, and masturbation provides a rapid way to cope with that discomfort. We can stop placing such a heavy burden on ourselves if we acknowledge that some of these connection issues are caused by unavoidable circumstances. We can regain our sense of dignity by realizing that these judgments are involuntary. We can more easily accept that we are not a fundamentally flawed person when we depersonalize the unfavorable responses of others. We are just one specific gene, hormone, and characteristic combination, negotiating a complicated social environment. We can start to end the cycle of irritation and compensating behaviors once we realize this. We begin to see that how we react to ourselves is more important than how other people react to us. We may be kind to ourselves and acknowledge that it's normal to be offended by criticism from others. Humans are social animals that want for acceptance, understanding, and connection. However, by putting aside the notion that every apathy or cold shoulder is a personal attack, we shift our attention from trying to appease an uncontrolled jury to strengthening our inner core. We discover the room to select our responses in this inner core. We can use our discomfort to motivate us to engage in more productive activities rather than withdrawing into loneliness and masturbation as a coping strategy. We can dedicate ourselves to pursuits that increase our self-assurance, broaden our skill sets, and ultimately show the world a more confident version of ourselves. This could entail putting a lot of effort into areas of our appearance that we can control, such as remaining in shape, clothing to accentuate our bodies, keeping ourselves clean, and making sure we carry ourselves with a confident, measured stance. Beyond the physical, it could entail honing our social and emotional intelligence, improving our ability to listen, cultivating a friendly sense of humor that helps start conversations, and identifying settings where our special blend of qualities is valued. The important thing is that we must learn to accept what we cannot change while we adapt what we can. The fact that some people will not be attracted to us will not be altered by any amount of self-improvement. These unintentional filters can categorize us in a way that is contrary to their natural preferences, whether it be our face features, our aroma, or something else entirely. Accepting this fact enables us to stop feeling sad for every individual who does not react favorably and instead concentrate on building relationships with those who do connect with who we are. As we gradually absorb this knowledge, amazing things begin to occur. We begin to see ourselves as members of a greater human fabric, all of us subject to the same unseen codes, rather than as victims of unfair social structures. We recognize others' struggle, that no one is universally loved, and that even the most conventionally handsome people have others who find them unattractive for reasons they cannot control. Our particular complaints are lessened by this larger viewpoint, which also makes it simpler to avoid self-pity. We learn to value the times of mutual affinity that do happen rather than obsessing over rejections. We understand that sincere relationships based on common principles, hobbies, or humor are far more significant than fleeting admiration bestowed purely on the basis of physical characteristics. We can approach others with less fear and more confidence if we have this understanding. We are aware that a negative response from someone does not necessarily indicate that we are unworthy or doomed to remain alone. It just indicates that we have not yet located our tribe. This mindset releases us from the desperation that can result in self-destructive behaviors, such as excessive masturbation as a coping mechanism for worry and uncertainty. Rather, we discover healthy methods to deal with rejection. We may find that creative endeavors, spiritual pursuits, or physical exercise allow us to let go of stress without degenerating into self-loathing. We might examine ourselves and ask ourselves, is there anything about me that I can reasonably improve to improve my overall presence and vitality? Perhaps it's learning to talk more clearly and slowly so that our voice conveys more assurance. In order to communicate openness and sincerity, it can entail developing deeper eye contact. Alternatively, it might entail adopting grooming practices that demonstrate self-respect. Nevertheless, we must exercise caution when doing all of this to avoid making the mistake of attempting to change who we are completely. One should not confuse self-improvement with self-rejection. Instead of trying to destroy what we have, we work to make it better. Our genetic makeup shapes who we are, and although we can enhance our appearance, the objective is to bring forth the finest version of ourselves, rather than a cheesy replica of someone else's ideal. A subtle but powerful part of this trip can be played by the technique of semen retention. We frequently experience more mental clarity, greater motivation, and a more lively presence when we maintain our sexual energy. These attributes can have a good impact on our vitality and how we present ourselves. Although retention by itself won't make everyone like us, it can help level out our emotional baseline and give us a sense of inner strength that lessens the hurt of criticism from others. People see that confidence as we grow more at ease with ourselves. Although it does not ensure universal acceptance, confidence frequently increases our chances of being fairly evaluated during those first few interactions. Additionally, confidence keeps us from descending into self-doubt or unhealthy coping mechanisms when we are rejected. This creates a positive feedback loop that strengthens our sense of self-worth over time. The more confident and at ease we are, the more likely we are to receive good feedback from others. The benefit of comprehending these unseen signals is that it increases empathy. We come to the realization that we evaluate other people in the same unconscious ways that they evaluate us. Thinking about this can make you more compassionate. We can recognize that we are likewise prone to prejudices and innate preferences when we see someone who does not immediately appeal to us, rather than blaming them. Given that we are all navigating a world filled of implicit judgments, we can be more understanding. The animosity or anger that frequently surface in social situations can be lessened by this empathy. We can just nod inwardly and conclude that we are simply not each other's.